And welcome back. Thank you for staying with us. About 50,000 people have died due to the abuse of illicit drugs and other substances in the country. The government has begun a second crackdown on this menace. And joining me now is Interior Principal Secretary Karanja Kibicho to tell us more about it. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, Anne.
Thank you for coming in. So I want to start with what you said last week when you were addressing, together with the Cabinet Secretary, various officials in your ministry, and you pretty much told them, ignore court orders, ignore county legislation if it is inhibiting you from performing your duties. And this is because you had a similar experience when the crackdown was initially took place in 2015. In what ways do you see the courts as somehow inhibiting your work?
In this country, we don't have a set of citizens for the courts, a set of citizens for the county governments, and a set of citizens for the national government. All citizens belong to Kenya. And the first cardinal responsibility of us, especially in the security sector, is to make sure that we safeguard lives and property. And in the execution of this mandate, we even protect people against themselves. That's why we would take you to court if you try to commit suicide. In the last 10 years, like you have rightly said, we have lost to illicit brews, drugs, over 50,000 people. And if this is not tragic, I don't know what tragedy could mean. And I think it is from there that the ministry sometimes back decided to deal with this problem. And this problem has become more pronounced because of the conflict that is deliberately interpreted when we came into the new constitutional order in 2010, where in the Schedule 4, the licensing of liquor was taken to county government as a function. And I think this has effectively been used to frustrate the efforts of national government. But when we read properly, we see that the licensing is in no way meant to conflict the other national laws. So it's our expectation that before the county government issues a license for revenue purposes, other laws, like for example public health law, the NACADA laws, the KRA business permits, must be observed first. And what we have witnessed in the last 3 years when we've been seriously at this is that is not the case.
You think counties are in a rush to make money and are not concerned with the standards of some of these products?
Precisely. The standards for alcoholic drinks are set out very well in the Kenya Bureau of Standards. You know, they have a whole chapter on alcoholic beverages, what they should contain and how they should be handled. Public health has a whole chapter on how premises that sell either food or beverages for human consumption should be. And I think because of the nature of alcoholic drinks, there is a whole law that spells out what is it that consumers must do, what is it that manufacturers must do, and what is it that retailers must do, and distributors. And I think it is these laws that have completely been ignored, and because of the lacuna that has been created by the assumption that licensing by the county government also means taking care of the standards, then we have seen a lot of people start venturing into that area because it's not very well regulated. But the ministry has taken a bold decision that standards belong to the national government. Revenue collection for KRA taxation belongs to national government. Public health belongs to national government. Counterfeits control and regulation belongs to government. And I think we have sufficient laws that the national government will use to make sure that even the prosecution that really has frustrated us. And I think when you asked about the statement about ignoring court orders, first of all, I would want to clarify that I did not encourage anyone to ignore the court orders, but I take it upon myself, given between allowing Kenyans to die and ignoring an order that I think doesn't serve the cardinal responsibility of us protecting lives of Kenyans, I would choose to protect the life of Kenyans.
But as a law enforcer, do you not believe in following due process, and why would courts act in bad faith?
I'll tell you this so that you understand. I have been to a place where I was met at the gate with a court order stopping me from accessing that place, together with the relevant officers who are supposed to enforce. And we decided to enter that place. We poured 100,000 liters of illicit brew. So the choice I have to make is a moral one, and I think knowing what this illicit brew is doing to the young generation, it's doing to this country.
But let me just take a minute to talk about the relationship between national government and, I mean, the executive, let me say, and the judiciary. Why is there this constant, speaking at cross purposes when both should be working together to serve the republic? It defeats logic that the courts would be immune to reason in that respect. This is a life and death matter, that they would go ahead and, like I said before, act in such bad faith. To what do you attribute this constant, being at loggerheads over? I wouldn't speak for the judiciary, but I would confidently speak about what our roles are in the executive. I would expect that when there is a problem of this magnitude, like you rightly say, that all arms of government speak the same language. And I am saying very boldly, all arms of government. And arms of government means that even if functionally you make independent decisions, the cardinal responsibility of all arms, especially in protection of lives and property, must be very well in sync. And I think from where we sit, when we are to fight crime, when we are to fight such menace as illicit brews, then we look at is the order given meant to safeguard lives or not? I'll give you another example. I have been faced with a court order. There is this thing called kangara, that whose only purpose is to produce changa, which is packed and manufactured contrary to the law. And an order is given that that kangara cannot be destroyed because kangara is not changa. Common sense tells us that kangara has no other use other than to make changa. And here I am faced with, and I have about 20,000 liters of this kangara in front of me, and it has no other use other than to make changa. So I'm faced with a problem. Will I obey it or will I destroy it? And I think going forward, we are encouraging that we look at the problem in a more sensible manner, to know that we are losing lives, families are breaking, we are losing generations to this illicit brew. Just need to walk into one of these villages and see at 10 a.m. there are young men lying by the roadside out of consumption of this illicit brew. And if that doesn't touch any arm of the government, it is worrying. All right, let's just move very quickly then through the next few questions. So there was, of course, the 2015 crackdown that the president ordered, but here we are again with scenarios like what you are painting. First of all, is Central Kenya still very much the, your target point in terms of cracking down on this second generation liquor, etc.? And who dropped the ball post 2015 for us to find ourselves in this position again?
I think no ball was dropped. In 2015, when the president ordered a crackdown, it was mainly the front face of this crackdown were the politicians. And obviously, they were all slapped with a lot of court orders because, and we are talking about big business. We are talking about huge, big business. So they were slapped with a lot of court orders, and obviously personal, because unlike us in the executive who would have the Attorney General act for us, the politicians were having personal liability on this, and therefore they retreated and left us as the national administration in the field to push. When we started pushing, obviously without using the laws, because to be fair to judiciary, they would only rule based on the evidence before them. And because in the second phase, early 2016, we were cracking down, and I want to separate crackdown on second generation alcoholic drinks from illicit brews. The illicit brews, the second generation, the fight has continued. Even I speak to you, they are still pushing, only that the prominence in terms of media coverage and all that was lost because of the activities of 2016-2017. So it's still going on. What we are doing is re-energizing, so that out of the 21 companies that met the conditions then, if there are addition, then we'll have to check, have they met and have they complied with the law. But the worrying bigger problem is not even the internal manufacturing of this. It's what comes from our neighboring countries. I think this what we want to fight more, because there's a lot of it coming that obviously does not meet any of our standards. And
we'll get to that, but just because you talked about you know, the provincial administration and its work, at least in as far as the drug trade and even this illicit brews concerned. In 2015, Nelson Mara, who was then the Coast Regional Commander, basically said that, you know, his team had been sadly infiltrated by cartels. Does your office have a handle on how many people within law enforcement themselves have been compromised in this whole illicit trade, be it alcohol, drugs, or any other harmful substances?
And I think you remember in 2016, early 2017, I was very famous for chiefs to bring my coffee. And we paid attention to exactly what you're asking. Amongst us, who are these people who are playing ball with the traders who are involved in both drugs and illicit brew and second generation trade? And you remember, we actually had to remove out of office almost 200 of our staff. And it worked well. And just like in any other trade, you still find there are bad people in it. What we want to do this time is move from now administration to the business, because the law is very clear. That last round of our crackdown was concentrating more on the administration, on the law enforcers. We sacked a lot of policemen, we sacked a lot of our own administrators, but we didn't push on the business side. This time, the push is on the business side. We are going to follow the law. If you have an outlet that is 300 meters in the proximity of a school, we shall close you.
And all the other Mutudo laws, I think, that outline, you know,
all of them. We shall, if you are in a place that has no warning signs, as stipulated in the law, we shall close you. And I think once now we concentrate on the business side, look, if you attack the supply of raw materials, then you are on your journey to success. What the previous crackdowns were doing is paying attention more to administration and the users. These users are innocent. They are just victims, and I think we are not going to pay attention in terms of punishment there. What we will do is more of treatment to those people.
I want to return to what you talked about, the substances that are coming from across the borders. I mean, you have Lamu, Mombasa, and you're talking about drugs coming in from Afghanistan, and then if you're talking about our land locked borders, then you've talked about this illicit brew. Why are we unable to effectively police these borders?
I think when you have an ocean and a port, regrettably there will be very many attempts to move things around the port. Genuine, legitimate, and bad ones. And I think the onus is on the law enforcers to ensure that there is continuous surveillance to ensure bad substances don't enter into our country. And I think if you go to both the port of Mombasa and our airports, there is very serious presence of anti-narcotic police unit that's doing the best they can do within the equipment they have and within their means to ensure that we minimize on entry of this into a country.
You're talking about the equipment that they have. That's a budgetary question. Is it about pure and simple a lack of political will to properly fund law enforcers so that they can actually crack down on what is a billion-dollar enterprise?
I think if we separate the movement from what transits, because that is purely international crime, to what eventually finds itself into a country for use by our young generation, then we start getting right. And I would rather pay attention to the one that gets into a country. We cannot sit here and lie to ourselves that we are going into this crackdown when there is no problem. We have done audit in schools. There is a lot of use of substance in schools. We have gone to places like Mombasa. There is a lot of use of substance. And I think the crackdown, like I said, targeting the business side is what the answer is. Who are these people? Because we know it's big business, it's international crime, and who are these people? And that's where we want to go.
Is it also state capture, as a U.S. State Department report after the 2013 general election alluded to, saying, quote, drug barons use the proceeds to contribute to political campaigns and buy influence within government officials? Is the point that top government officials are captured by these forces, and as the late Internal Security Minister George Saitoti said in Parliament, I believe in 2010, quoting at least 5 lawmakers, 3 of whom right now are still holding significantly high public office, that in some ways they're above your pay grade and your hands are tied?
I think it would be unfair to generally accuse government officials as being held hostage. Like I said, trade in these illicit substances is big business. And like any other big business, you will find still bad elements trying to penetrate. And what the government is trying to do, at least from our end, is to ensure that we start now going to who is this person who is making sure that this country has constant supply, has a supply of the substances themselves and the raw materials, and go for them. And I think if you give us a chance and you invite me here in the 4 months that we've given ourselves to do serious crackdown targeting the business side, then the story will be very different, because to be fair to government officials, really, that it is the drug money that is financing government officials.
That's what U.S. reports are saying.
That's an allegation that I would categorically refuse, because I'm a government official and I am sure I am not controlled by them. And so many of my colleagues would say the same thing. But we still know it's big business, it's big money. The best scenario for those illicit traders would be obviously to get a lot of our law enforcers on board, and I would want us to get a chance to go for these people.
Well, you said 4 months.
I'll be here in 4 months.
It's a date. We wish you well for the sake of so many Kenyan families who've been just completely broken apart by this menace. We want to hold you to your word.
4 months.
You're not captured. 4 months.
Yes.
Some big names behind bars.
We in the last, especially for illicit brews, in the last 2 years, we have hit serious suppliers of raw materials, people who were untouchable before. We have gone for big drug dealers. You know, there are some even in being tried in the...
They're cautious.
And we are going there. I think the warning shot is in the air. We have the law on our side. And just to clarify as we go, we have the institutions whose laws we are going to use. We have Kenya Bureau of Standards and Counterfeit Agency. We have the Public Health. Right. We have NACADA. And we are going to have each of them contribute a number of staff for the 4 months who we have put into teams. Those teams will comb the 25 counties that we have highlighted as hotspots, and we will be using the relevant law on the spot.
Right.
That's why we have those institutions with us in the crackdown.
PS, thanks for your time.
Thank you very much.
All right, we're taking a break. We're back with business sports also after this. Stay with us.